Yeah, so I would like to know, because I think we all have a shadow self, right? The darkness within us, and the light, and obviously, this woman who comes through all the steps of doing these elements, this walk with you, and I know you can do it very fast as well, but she comes to a place where she goes from being in her shadow life to becoming aware of it, and then facing it, and then embodying it, and then embracing it, and then stepping into her light and stepping into her life and kind of again claiming. Can you talk me through that?
Absolutely. So for me, it was a very much like important piece to actually face my shadow, right? And I had that help with a beautiful coach of mine, Frankie J. And it was beautiful to kind of like face it being held also in a safe space, because it can be very confronting to see the parts of yourself that you perhaps don't like or is not deemed by society as good, or and we all have, as you said, we all have that shadow aspect. So for me, it was about learning how to love and how to embrace that part of me instead of pushing away, because it felt like the more I pushed it away, the stronger it became. Like it was like wanting to be heard, wanting to be seen and felt and loved, and once I gave it a voice, it kind of like okay, like let's dance together instead of like I want to be the running the show kind of thing, so you kind of
Mm,
like, so it's about embracing and actually loving those parts of you, because all they are there for a reason, right? That there's perhaps unmet needs that they need to feel safe, to be loved, to feel worthy, you know.
mm.
So it's about loving on those parts, so then you can be that light and you can choose to be in the light because you have faced the shadow. Because if we just focus on the light, the light, the light, we'll always have that shadow in the background, and it's going to really hold you back in a sense, right? Because you're not giving it a voice, so it's going to always be there. So once you kind of like embrace it, you kind of like, okay, let's walk together the path instead of trying to hold you back from creating the
Yeah.
life that you want.
That is so, so true. It's like, a dog that smells that energy of fear. And so they tend to go for that person. They seem to be attracted to the person that has the most fear, that's trying to get away. But then the person that stands convicted inside their own certainty and faces it has got so much more of a compelling power. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. So this is all about, I guess, part of the next part of the journey in module 7, owning your body, owning your voice, and living a life of design rather than default. And gosh, gee whiz, I would have loved to have heard this, back in the day, because I think how many of us are just floating around like a drifter, just letting life determine where we end up, rather than saying, Napoleon Hill says it very well, be a master of your own destiny, not a victim of your history. So, talk me
Mm.
through owning the body, owning your own body, your own voice, and creating a life of design rather than default.
So in just to kind of like piece it together with the last bit, when we kind of integrate the shadow and the light, that's when we become whole, right? And that's when we kind of ground in our power. That's how we kind of like can own our body and our sense of self and our voice and our sense of worth, because we embraced everything, like we are not scared to kind of show the the not so good parts, or like what people may think about you or things like that. You're so grounded because you know yourself, you know your light, you know your shadow, and you've integrated and you learned how to love and embrace both polarities and create this wholesome living for yourself, which is brings to the designing of our life, rather than being the victim of the conditioning and the culture and the family beliefs and the limitations that perhaps are around you. You can actually be like, okay, what do I want? What do I want to stand for? What do I believe? And feel actually comfortable and confident to speak that truth to the
Mm.
world, right?
Wow. So this woman is going to become, a very empowered woman, and, so much better than suffering the original aches and pains and feeling so much victimization and hopelessness, and like they've got no voice, no power. So this is big. This is really big.
Mm,
So how
mm,
important is it for this woman to do this part of the module, which is really beginning to ground in to Mother Earth, and as she starts to really speak her truth? Can you talk to me about what are some of the perhaps processes that you would recommend for a woman to ground in? I know that this is part of what you're offering, but if I was to say to you, look, I'm really feeling like I'm just all over the place. I'm not present. I'm totally in my head all the time. I'm focused on what's going to go wrong in the future and what went wrong the other week, rather than
mhm.
being present with myself now. What strategies would you give to me?
Yeah, absolutely. So the most powerful tool that ever existed, and it's so accessible to us all, and most of us are not aware of it, is our breath, right? So our breath has the potential to regulate ourselves and ground ourselves in the present moment and bring that sort of like get out from your head into your heart, into your body, and to truly feel what's alive in your body. So a simple practice can just be put one hand in your heart, one hand
Mm,
in your belly, and just close your eyes and just focus on your breath in and out, and see if you can do a couple of rounds of belly breathing. So really in the inhale, you expand the belly, exhale, let it soften. And as you do that, just imagine like this beautiful light going from the top of your head all the way down to the base of your spine, to your root chakra. And then you connect with Mother Earth from that space. And then you can kind of like get her energy from grounding and nurturing, and allow her to hold you in that space as well.
do you include meditation in this when you're doing that for your, people?
Yeah, yeah. So my coaching is it's in embodiment, right? I don't we
Mm,
just don't talk about the mind or the processes and things. I bring my
no.
clients into their body and allow them to have the experience of the shift in energy, and that's what awakens the true power, right? Because they can feel it in their body, the shift, and they can feel it that it works, and the body, as we talked about, will remember, right? Because it holds the codes and everything. So once they experience it, they will never forget that, and when they need it, that will come to the
So
surface.
that is just, that's crazy good. That's like so, 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 so good. And, there's so much thanks that I would have to give to someone like you making that impression on the earth, because, my mission is just so much to impact 1 million people by the year 2028. And I know that it's
Woohoo!
people yay, it's people like you that are going to help me do that. That,
Yeah,
and
let's do it.
I almost see it as a new earth, that you're creating
Mm.
worth. And so this woman's gone through so much alchemy with you, and I guess as she's moving through the transmutation of the pain, and then kind of really channeling it into her passion and her life purpose. Talk me through the alchemizing process, like something that you believe is either a story or even just the way that a person alchemizes themselves, or even when they're inside of your container. Can you enlighten us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, the alchemization is the process of really going in and feeling, right? Feeling the pain, feeling the emotion that is in the body, and allow it to in itself start kind of unraveling and unfolding. And that in itself will bring you the gifts, the messages, the golden nuggets that you can use to then, feel that aliveness, because you actually gave that feeling a voice. So sometimes my clients will come to me and they'll be like, oh, like I'm feeling really, really sad, or I feel stuck. I feel, this pain somewhere. So I just pretty much, guide them to connect with their body. We go through that whole process of connection, and I take them through their happy place that we've created, so they feel safe, they feel held. And then we start going in deeper into what is that pain about, because it's not about the pain, right? It's what is underneath that pain. And once we access that core of the pain, that it kind of like dissipates in itself. My clients is always like, in the beginning, they're like, complaining that they have this pain, they're feeling like all these yucky feelings, and then after the alchemization, they're like, it's gone, like I don't feel the pain anymore. It's just, I feel peaceful, I feel grounded. So it's about actually going and feeling, because that's, for me, that's what in my journey worked. It's going through feeling to heal, pretty much, because otherwise
Yeah.
you just kind of, going with the flow, unconsciously trying to put band-aids and not actually accessing the core that it's underneath.
So I can almost imagine like them going right down deep into that space and really owning what's going on and
Mm-hmm.
embodying it almost and embracing it, rather than just running from it and then having it trigger again, and running from it and then having it trigger again. It sounds like what you're doing is really going down and pulling that weed out from its very core and just completely dissolving it. So, how is expressing so important? Because you talk about this in your module as well, expressing
Mm-hmm.
emotions to help remove the dis-ease. Why is it so important to be able to express these emotions?
So it's very fundamental, this sort of expression. The first thing is for actually the body to have that release of charge of that emotion, right? So we don't hold that sort of charge in the body that perhaps keep us like feeling, tense and stuck and kind of yeah, that sort of like yucky feeling. Um,
Mm-hmm.
And then once we start tapping into the expression of it and uncovering the core of that issue, that this is, which is just an
Mm.
imbalance, we can start dissolving from within to the external.
Wow.
So it's kind of like um, acceptance and forgiveness. It's very important pieces, because for us to alchemize something, we must accept where we are, right?
Mm.
Otherwise, we just, as you said, we keep going and trying to put band-aids on top of band-aids. And so once we really accept and we voice it, yes, I feel awful, I feel shitty, I feel, ashamed. Once we recognize that, we can kind of have the lead back and being like, okay, so what can I do instead? And then we can create strategies and different routes for you to access your power from within.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned also a big part of this being like the forgiveness process, because that forgiveness that we not only sometimes have to give for another person, because I've seen some of the most tragic things happen to people where they literally have said to me, Terry, there is no way on God's planet that I can forgive that person. We had even a person in one of our specific bigger programs that was actually releasing someone who murdered her husband, right? And,
Wow.
she had a good reason to say that. And,
Mm.
one of the things that I said, I said, this has got nothing to do with letting that person off the hook. But,
Yes.
while you are actually holding a grudge, you are letting that person off the hook, because the universe is going, well, I don't need to bring any learning to this person. They don't need any retribution, because she's got this, she's already taken care of it. But
Yeah.
when you are actually releasing, you are allowing you are going from, it's not letting them off the hook, you're going from where you're standing to handing it over to the universe,
Mm.
so that they can come into their own learning. So
Yeah.
talk us through this forgiveness process for you and what it meant for you.
Absolutely. So you're completely spot on, and that was actually my fear when I was in the forgiveness process. I was like, but what if I forgive? Am I condemning the behavior? Am I accepting what he did and what I went through? Like I don't want to do that, and until I learned that forgiveness is a gift that we give ourselves, it's about releasing the pain that we hold. It's not about accepting what they did and accepting the behavior in itself. It's about freeing ourselves to kind of release that sort of load that we no longer need to carry, so we
Mm,
can you know um, be free to create the life that we want.
I love
and
that.
and I
Yeah.
and from all the other modules, like I've for me it once I started going through my shadow and seeing so much the depths of my conditioning and my trauma and healing my inner child, I can have so much more compassion for people as well. Like I can see that hurt people will hurt people, and you can kind of have sort of like a different perspective. You don't take things so much more personally because you can see that through that behavior there is someone that is hurt underneath. That's not to say that you're going to accept. You can create the boundaries, like and things like that. But yeah, that sort of like opens up the compassion, and I feel like that's what the world actually needs in this moment, is to have that compassion for one another and forgiving ourselves first, because for me it was kind of like I felt like a failure as a woman, and then I was like, I allowed that stuff to happen to me, like the emotion, manipulation and things like that. And it's really coming back from to that space of like I didn't know any better, like if I knew
Mm,
better I would have done better, I would chosen better, I would have stand up for myself.
mm.
So it's really
And this,
going again
yeah,
into the core.
into the core. And this is also, I can see how it's also about, if you're going through, if you can relate to even one or two things here that Carolina has said, can you imagine being able to stand on the shoulders of a giant and claim back your power and go through this process that I know? I did a forgiveness process with Dr. John D. Martini way back
Mm,
when, and this was what happens is, and this is what people can expect when they're coming into your program. You're holding on to this piece, but this is the magical piece that when you finally let it go, it's not just the 1, 2, or 3 things that may be really affecting your life the most. It has a domino effect. It actually cleans up and it shifts energy and it changes people. I mean, I'm so excited about this program that's coming. And,
Me too.
yeah. So, I mean, I can hear, reclaim back your power. And I feel that people, if you are wanting to reclaim your power through this incredible lady, what we're going to do is we're going to put a link here, and you're going to be able to make a direct line of contact with Carolina. If you haven't been able to find this lady and her program, because this is a signature program, she also does bespoke one-on-ones, and they are extremely lucrative. So you can only but imagine the support network you're going to have from going from zero to hero on this reclamation of your power journey. So I'm going to have the links put here, and Carolina's website is currently under construction. So
It's coming.
Yes, it's very exciting. So you will be able to definitely take advantage of the fact that by actually coming here onto this podcast, you will be granted the special pre-price of pre-website launch of this specific program. So there's going to be a big saving on that. So you will have to mention that you heard this from Terry Messenger's podcast, and that will entitle you to being completely taken care of. Now, I have to ask this question, but is there anything that you want to say to this audience before, I set you free to evolve all these thousands of beautiful people?
Yes. So if you are in that space, that you feel super disconnected, that you feel unworthy, that you feel, not out of control, perhaps, just know that spot, it's actually fertile soil for your greatest opportunity to grow and expand and evolve, and learn from your pain. I feel like that's the most rewarding and most aligned thing that we can ever do to have our soul ascending, into our next lifetimes, because I feel like that's why we're here for,
Yes.
to learn how to love ourselves, how to reclaim our power, and how to be kind and compassionate towards others. And then from that space, as my business name is, have that radiant ripple to shower throughout the whole world, because you have done the work in yourself and you feel super confident and empowered from within.
That is so good. Well, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, Carolina, for those fortunate people that are going to come and work with you. This is all about channeling your worst adversity and transmuting it into your greatest university of power. Yes. And finding your voice and really stepping in to your greatest version. So thank you so much. And until we meet again, we'll see you all.
Terry.
You're welcome. See you on the next podcast.
Yeah.
Thank